mode.
Hi everyone, and thank you for joining us, and welcome to the Youth Empowerment Service Learning for Students webinar presented by HEART. This webinar is part of HEART's series of humane education webinars. You can watch our previous webinars and find out when new ones will be taking place by visiting our website at teachhumane.org. Before we get started, we'd like to introduce ourselves.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Russell, and I'm the Service Learning Director at HEART. I went to Barnard College as an undergraduate and later received a master's in special education from Bank Street College. I spent a number of years teaching children with a range of emotional and developmental challenges, and then worked for many years supporting children and families experiencing homelessness and domestic violence or who had become involved in the foster care system. Helping fragile families connect to and build a sense of community and giving vulnerable children the space and tools they need to find their voices is my passion. I've been working with HEART for 9 years now, connecting our students to the people, animals, and natural spaces that make up their world in school and community-based humane education programs.
Hello everybody, and my name is Chris Perucci. I'm a program manager for HEART, and I have my Bachelor's of Science degree in Secondary Education Social Studies from New York University, and I have a Juris Doctor from Hofstra University School of Law. Prior to joining HEART, I was an 11th grade U.S. history and government teacher in New York City. And then while attending law school, I worked for a number of law firms, government agencies, and nonprofit organizations. Right after graduating, I briefly worked as a New York director for a small farm animal protection nonprofit organization. And I've been with HEART for 4 years. In that time, I've developed and taught curriculum for all grade levels, as well as professional development courses, humane education training programs, and I've also created educational resources for both educators and the general public. 2 examples being HEART's animal-themed resource guide and HEART's education and rescue videos. From all of us here at HEART, we'd like to thank you so much for joining us today. And before we dive into our topic today and start exploring humane education-focused service learning, we want to tell you just a little bit about HEART for those that are unfamiliar. We have offices in New York, Chicago, Indianapolis, and Portland, Oregon, and we do direct service and teach comprehensive humane education to students of all ages. We provide our programs in school and after schools, as well as running our own summer camps. We offer educators resources like free lesson plans, in-person trainings, consultations, and webinars. And lastly, we raise awareness about and secure support for humane education. And we do so through the promotion in educational settings as well as passing legislation.
We wanted to start this webinar with a quote from one of the founders of modern education, John Dewey. "The only way to prepare for social life is to engage in social life. To form habits of social usefulness and serviceableness apart from any direct social need and motive, apart from any existing social situation, is like teaching the child to swim by going through the motions outside of the water." Now this quote really sets the table for what we're going to be discussing in this webinar. Social engagement, forming habits, and creating environments for our students to participate in the world around them in a constructive and impactful way. In this webinar, we will answer the question, what is service learning? Describe how service learning can empower students, teachers, and the vulnerable communities that our students may connect with. We'll also going to discuss the tools and goals associated with service learning in an elementary age setting. Lastly, we'll share with you some examples of service learning projects that HEART's been a part of, both for early elementary and upper elementary age students.
So let us begin by defining what is service learning. And to do so, let's start off by discussing some of the common examples and approaches to service learning and service projects. As we will touch on in a moment, HEART's approach to service learning can look and feel much different than many of the other examples of service learning that are out there. Now, I'd like to start off by saying all service learning and all service projects have their own merits. And anytime we can harness and foster student compassion and enthusiasm to get involved and to help, we should jump at the chance. Now, part of this webinar, however, is hopefully to provoke folks to think about deep connections in how we, as educators, can help our students become interested and active members in their community. Now, here we've listed 3 common service learning projects: penny drives, canned food drives, and corporate-sponsored programs. Each one of these projects undoubtedly can have positive impacts on communities, and students, classes, schools can walk away from these types of projects with a sense of accomplishment. Though commonly, there's a disconnect between the good that's ultimately being done and the students who participated. Taking a step back, I'm sure many of us have taken part in canned food drives, either as an educator, a parent, a student. I know I've taken place in more than I can even count. Though it's not always the case, many times these canned food drives will sort of consist of a very brief outline of the issue. For example, maybe the issue is a local homeless shelter is in need of supplies during the holiday season. So the outline is presented. Maybe it's posters that are lining the school hallways, or maybe a homeroom or classroom teacher is describing the issue to the students. Then, over the course of days, maybe weeks, maybe even a month or so, students will bring in canned food items that either they took out of their family's pantries, or maybe they went to the grocery store and purchased them specifically. They'll bring those cans, they'll bring those foods into the school and drop them off in a big box, in a big bin, placed somewhere in a public space at the school. And for many students, this is where the engagement in the service project ends. They don't see the impact the food may have, and they aren't afforded the possibility to truly empathize and connect with the community that they are seeking to help. And they're left with an implicit understanding that service and helping simply means buying things for those that can't buy it themselves. Hart proposes a different approach.
As a humane education organization, we have a distinctive approach to creating and implementing service learning. Humane education has a long history associated with working to increase awareness of the needs and conditions of the non-human animals that we share our world with, and to foster compassion for all living beings. The HEART program was created with an even more ambitious agenda. Truly creating compassion for all living beings also requires understanding the complex interconnectedness that sustains our living planet, and recognizing the role that inequality, social marginalization, resource exploitation, and other forms of injustice that are experienced by our fellow human beings can play in their capacity to fully participate in creating more just and more compassionate communities. HEART therefore has extended the meaning of humane education to include teaching about critical social justice and environmental ethics issues, along with lessons on animal rights and animal protection, and crafted our curriculum to create learning experiences that evoke a direct and meaningful understanding of how we connect to the other people and animals with whom we share our living home. All our service learning thus tries to frame the issues that our students act upon and the ways in which service projects themselves are designed and implemented through the lens of our shared experience with all other beings and our common dependence on a healthy and diverse natural world. Specifically, this framing requires that we always assess how our actions will affect not only the target group or issue that our project focuses on, but also its impact on other people, animals, and the environment.
So what is empowerment within this framework? We empower our students by giving them the tools to empower others. Let's first of all contrast this understanding of empowerment with a more common idea of charity. Now, charity is usually a top-down approach where it's responding to suffering that we can often see in school-based community service drives. If you recall earlier, the examples we gave, like penny harvests, where money can go to a large charity organization that may or may not have roots in the local communities, and things like corporate-sponsored drives that are seeking essentially to do two different outcomes. One is to foster the goodwill in their community, while also, two, promoting their products. Now, this is not to say that all charities have nefarious intent, but they're not the sort of structures or places that encourage deep identification for those that are suffering and prioritize that understanding of those who are suffering and their needs from their own perspective. For Heart, compassion is located in the space where we meet others and we form a common bond.
We do this by being able to really hear others speaking in their own voices. In the Heart program, we try to teach students to learn about and respect and respond to the suffering of marginalized peoples like farm workers or groups subject to religious or racial discrimination through the lens of those who are experiencing the injustice. When we extend this approach beyond social justice issues, it means we begin responding to animal suffering by understanding the qualities we share with non-human animals and by respecting their individual integrity, instead of objectifying them in terms of a certain role or use for us that we may be comfortable with. We approach environmental justice issues by looking at the impact of environmental damage on more vulnerable peoples and animals and the way it affects the interconnected living systems we all depend upon. This creates a model for service that empowers because it locates change at the point of suffering, and it sees the marginalized as powerful actors who need support, not helpless victims who need externally imposed solutions. So again, we see ourselves as empowering our students by giving them the tools to empower others.
We're now at the third section of our webinar, Service Learning for Elementary Age Students. In the first two sections, we spoke some more of the theory and the philosophy behind service learning and how we here at Heart try to approach service in a more comprehensive and interconnected way. In this last section, we wanted to share with you some practical skills students should acquire during a service learning project, as well as highlight some of the service learning projects Heart has done with their students, in the hopes that they might inspire you to engage in your own service learning, no matter what age or no matter what the grade level. First, we'd like to highlight some skills, tools, and goals for service learning when we approach it through the lens of a long-term project, in which students will dedicate time on their projects over the course of a number of weeks. There are certain skills and tools students should be honing in order for their experience, as well as the overall project, to be most impactful.
Okay, first up, teaching consensus skills is the foundation for a student-driven approach. By consensus, we mean an approach to managing group process that is leaderless, where different ideas are listened to and valued equally, and conflicts are resolved by creating new, inclusive ideas until all group members feel heard and agree to move forward. As we'll see in a bit when we discuss some of our service projects in more detail, this doesn't mean as teachers that we give up our roles as mediators. It takes a lot of teaching and supporting key interpersonal skills throughout the process to make this work for our younger students. But the benefits in increasing pro-social interaction and those meaningful connections we talked about earlier are immense. The overall importance of this approach to group process for us is that all voices are equally valued. The skills we teach to support positive, collaborative group process help students to recognize that the needs of one group and the differing opinions of members within a group don't have to be addressed within a zero-sum either-or structure. As students learn within their own group process that consensus and collaboration yields more creative and impactful results than arguing and dismissing others' ideas, they also learn to see the issues and problems they may be focusing on for their projects in a different light. Environmental concerns don't have to conflict with the needs of the people who are living in the region. Animal protection and humane treatment doesn't have to come at the expense of services for people. Protecting the rights of one group of marginalized people doesn't restrict the rights of others.
Our second emphasis is on critical thinking skills. Now, critical thinking skills are often taught in language arts or social studies lessons as tools to get to a correct answer. But within the context of the humane education approach to service learning, these same skills are introduced and supported as a means to achieve a shared goal. The collaborative structure and emphasis on achieving something for others creates a wonderful space for students with learning differences to improve their core skill sets. And they'll discover strengths that maybe are overlooked in the more traditional learning settings. Now, research methods that include exploration of primary and secondary sources, physical artifacts, personal experience, and active community engagement broaden these range of skills and the wealth of knowledge a student can contribute to their group. By focusing the research and critical thinking on a shared goal instead of individual success, a student's learning is freed from some of the pressure to be right at all costs, which unfortunately is a mentality that standardized testing inevitably has fostered in many of our students.
The service learning program, amongst all its other goals, seeks to offer non-traditional learners opportunities to use skills that are often overlooked in school settings, giving them an experience of personal empowerment and success. Allowing students within their consensus groups to decide on the way that they will teach others about the issues they're working on gives students who have learning differences or developmental challenges the chance to meaningfully contribute to their group's projects by utilizing those skills that come most naturally to them. As all voices and contributions are respected within the consensus framework, students who've been accustomed to failure or social rejection can feel included and valued. So let's now share some examples of service projects we've done with very young kids and with the upper elementary students so you can see how these concepts might look in practice.
So we'll start with the early elementary age students, and arguably the most difficult group of students to guide through these types of service learning projects. In fact, when Hart was first tasked to create a service learning program for children's ages 5 to 8, the research that we did yielded very little results in terms of types of service projects that we can use as examples. What we found was that this age range was asked to participate in the type of programs that we discussed at the onset of this webinar. Projects like penny drives and fundraising, walks, food donations really seem to be the only things being done with the younger students. Well, at least those are the things that we're able to find online as examples. So, utilizing our unique position as outside educators, Hart is determined to offer students, even as young as 5 years old, to engage in service learning programs that seek to be moved beyond this typical type of project. A venue that has challenged us here at Hart to create a wide variety of service learning projects has been our Caring Kids Animal Ambassador program. Now, this program is a result of a partnership between Hart and a no-kill animal shelter in New York City called Animal Haven. The Caring Kids program has children from ages 5 to 8 visit Animal Haven for an hour once a week for 3 consecutive weeks. And they're there to learn about a specific issue facing a group of animals and engage in service learning projects to help those particular animals. And as you can probably already guess, the limited amount of time that we spend with the children doesn't really afford us the ability to implement some of those skills, those tools, and the ultimate goals that we typically are seeking in service learning. The 3-day time span necessitates that the service projects sort of be pre-planned and introduced to the groups for their immediate completion. But what we lack for in time with the participants, we try to make up for in the creativity of the projects. For example, as you can see on this slide, we have lights, camera, action. We put together a service learning project about pit bulls and utilized video to allow the kids to share some of the things that they learned about this specific and misunderstood breed. You may be thinking to yourself, video, there's no way I can do that with my students. I don't know the first thing about making a video. And those are very reasonable reactions to have, but I'm here to assure you that a video doesn't have to be of award-winning quality to A, be effective, and B, embolden your students to whatever the service learning project's cause is. Additionally, I, for one, have no training or technical background in video production, but I simply utilize the iMovie app on my Mac, and I'll cut together some clips and make a short piece. An example is one that I'd like to show you right now that those students I mentioned before about who worked with the Pitbull program did. So right now I'm going to show you a quick 2-minute example video of the types of things that you can work with your students. As you can see, it's a rather basic video, but what it does is it energizes the students. The students are allowed to share this video online, so it's used as an educational tool that they can use in their day-to-day life. Another educational or advocacy tool that can be utilized is social media. In today's world, one of the fastest and easiest ways to disseminate information to a large group of people is through the use of sites such as Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, Instagram, and others, something that most of us probably use every day. And our students are someone who can utilize this just as well. In another Caring Kids program, the animal ambassadors learned about the Great Pacific Garbage Patch and all the plastic and other debris that is littering our oceans. In response to learning about this information, the kids created trash art out of things like plastics and bottle caps. Each one of these art pieces contained eco-friendly messaging, reminding people what happens to their garbage and advocating folks to curb some of their plastic consumption. These art pieces were then photographed and shared all over social media, spreading the children's eco-conscious message all over the World Wide Web. Social media can also be used to reach out to individuals who only years ago folks would have no access to. A few summers ago, at one of our summer camps, our campers were learning about the horrors involved with poaching, specifically the growing concern over the poaching of elephants and rhinos. In addition to learning about poaching and some of the ways people are trying to combat it, the campers were also made aware of that at the time the camp was taking place, then Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was working on an anti-poaching initiative. And as a thank you to the State Department and as a way to spread awareness about poaching, the campers tweeted at Secretary Clinton photos of them holding up signs and posters thanking her for her work and in support to end poaching. One final example of service learning for younger students I wanted to share with you is another example that took place at Caring Kids. But this example showcases the interconnectedness of animal issues with human issues. During the course of a 3-day program, the animal ambassadors learned about all that goes into being a responsible companion animal guardian, and how some folks who may want to give their animals everything they need and everything they want simply cannot because they lack the means to do so. Kids spent time during the program creating care bags to donate to one such group of individuals. Now, Hart was lucky enough to partner with a wonderful organization called the Jewish Association Serving the Aging, or commonly referred to as JASA. As their name indicates, the work with the elderly populations with both housebound and those with social service needs. So with the help of JASA, we were able to identify the types of resources that their members needed in order to continue to care for their companion animals. So we took simple treats, toys, litter, wee-wee pads, some other things, and we put them in the care bags, as well as with one very special item. Handwritten, or for those that couldn't write, hand-decorated cards from the animal ambassadors themselves. On the final day of the Caring Kids program, the ambassadors were visited by some representatives from JASA, and they were able to personally donate their care bags, knowing that the care and work that they put into it was going to people and animals in need. Their sense of accomplishment was palpable, and the entire project was elevated, at least in my mind, by the fact that we received some very heartwarming thank yous from the seniors who were so touched by all of the animal ambassadors' work. So now for a look at some projects done with the older elementary population, I'm going to turn it over to Jean.
Okay, some awesome projects, Chris. Okay, so I'd like to share an example of a semester-long service project I did with 5th grade classes in the Bronx on how we eat. Here, we were exploring the impact of modern food production, distribution, and consumption on people, animals, and the environment. This general theme allowed us to really connect many of the core concerns of social and environmental critical animal welfare issue, factory farming. Framing the service programming in this age group by offering a theme like this is one effective way to provide the kind of scaffolding that elementary age students need to think meaningfully about complex community issues without overly determining how the projects that they will develop unfold. As always in our longer service programs, students first participated in 3 classes that highlight the core tools that they're going to be needing in order to be effective in designing and implementing a service project. 1, working with others using consensus techniques. 2, using critical thinking skills to do active research on their topics. And 3, exploring creative multimedia ideas for presenting their work. Teaching consensus at the outset sets the tone and the expectations for how we will treat each other throughout the entire program, and helps us as teachers to connect the respectful and compassionate responses we want to encourage towards all people and animals to the immediate interpersonal challenges that students will face in the group process. So in this particular class, as in many of these longer-term service projects, I started by introducing the concept of a win-win resolution to conflicts. I had the students think of ways that common conflicts between them could be resolved in a way that both parties feel good about, and then got the class to agree to always try to go for win-win solutions. So then I modeled, and we practiced together active listening skills, really acknowledging others and showing respect through body language and by reframing the speaker's message to let them know that they've really been heard. Then we explored the concept of consensus, which is really letting all of the group's ideas and opinions be heard, and then using those active listening skills to talk to each other and come up with a new idea for action that everybody feels good about. Each group practiced this using mini scenarios that illustrate conflicting interests that they needed to resolve in a win-win. And they learned how to use a fist to 5 hand gesture, where 5 fingers means you love the idea and each fewer finger displayed indicates decreasing agreement that can speed up group decision making when all voices have been heard. So after we completed our process learning lessons, in the next class I introduced the impacts of animal and industrial agriculture, the fast food industry, and the ways that class and race can affect people's access to healthy foods through a set of brief videos that students took notes on and discussed after each clip. In the next class, small groups then used their consensus skills to discuss their interests and decide on a focus for their project. In this age group, I often offer the class's topic areas connected to the introductory information, in this case videos that we watched, for the groups to select or to modify for their focus, and then each group was free to expand and explore that focus area in their own way in creating the project. After each group chose a focus area, they then spent several sessions doing active research on their topics. They explored internet-based information about their interests, found books and articles, looked at videos, and in many cases conducted some on-the-ground research in their own families and in the school community to see how the issues they were learning about impacted others. Using this research, they decided on a way that their topic directly affected their community and designed a project to spread awareness and make positive change. So examples of projects that students created in this program include instigating a petition and letter writing campaign to lobby their state senator, who was responsible for blocking legislation to enhance the rights and benefits of migrant farm workers in both animal and crop agriculture in our state. Writing an illustrated multicultural recipe book for meals that use healthy whole foods and also reduce or eliminate animal products in their ingredients. Creating a visual teaching tool to compare the amount, type, and health risks of pesticides and herbicides found in conventionally grown versus organically grown food. Making posters or dioramas to tell the story of a day in the life of a selected factory farm animal species, helping others to better understand the special qualities of our farm animals and the extreme cruelty that they experience in a factory farm condition. Or lastly, exploring the food chain that services our fast food industry and launching a no junk food pledge campaign to spread awareness about the health consequences of fast versus whole foods and to provide healthy alternative ideas for snacks. So that gives a more detailed overview of a longer service program we might do. Some other themes and projects I've done recently following this structure include a program focusing on homes and homelessness that explored the impact in our communities of homelessness on families who are in shelter, as well as individuals who reject social services, the crisis of overpopulation for companion animals, and the need for a safe and clean urban habitat as home to our wild animal neighbors. Again, you can see that we were trying to find themes that are relevant to the students' lives and also connect the local needs of people, animals, and our natural spaces. Students generated projects in this program where they, for example, created a PowerPoint presentation to teach about native bird species and the threats they face. And at the same time, they made bird nesters and feeders out of recycled materials. Another group made homemade dog and cat toys that were donated to local animal shelters and to rescue groups. And another example of a project in this program, groups learned about a local family shelter for mothers with young children and the special challenges that they face, and made I'm a Good Neighbor badges to encourage their schoolmates to support needy families in their neighborhood in a variety of different ways. So just one more example, in another school we used a theme of vulnerability to identify what variables can make a group of people, animals, or a natural urban space more easily harmed or less likely to be able to advocate for themselves. As a theme, it served as a way to introduce the concept of differential power in our economic and political structures as it can directly affect our communities. Examples of projects that students created in this program include organizing a multi-generational event at the local library with a senior center in the neighborhood. Students created themed games and art activities, as well as interviews and storytelling activities to allow the generations to interact and to hear from their elders directly about how young people can support them. Another group created an educational presentation to teach about the effects of plastic waste and other toxins on our local, often neglected waterways and shores, and made non-toxic household cleaners, decorated reusable cotton bags to provide environmentally healthy alternatives. Another example from this program, a couple of groups made one-page dictionaries of common words and phrases in some of the many languages spoken by recent immigrant students in the school community so that new students can be welcomed and included more easily as they learn English. Many of these kinds of projects can be easily incorporated into shorter experiences, service experiences, when time doesn't permit a full program or the nature of the group you're working with requires a less structured approach. I've done after-school and community-based projects over shorter time periods or even on a one-day basis where the students learned about an issue and made something to actively connect it to their lives and to their communities. So some examples of those kinds of shorter term or even one-day projects include learning about climate change and alternative energy and then making our own solar oven, learning about industrial agriculture and commercial food production, how it impacts pollinators, and then making flower bombs, which are seeds in little clay balls with non-neonicotinoid seeds for urban distribution, learning about plastic pollution and making advocacy cotton totes that spread the word as we shop, doing a school-wide bullying survey, followed by a respect pass it on activity, learning about child labor and launching a fair trade chocolate campaign in the school, making Meatless Monday posters to encourage reducing animal products in our diets, making homemade dog or cat toys for local shelters and creating a sign-up campaign to enlist locals or school members as families for rescue animals. So, please go to our website, which is shown at the end of the webinar, to find a wealth of lessons to help generate ideas like this for humane-based service and to get materials to help you enrich your own projects.
So we'll end our webinar returning to where we started. John Dewey's quote about service and education. The only way to prepare for social life is to engage in social life. At Heart, we believe every student can and should graduate from school motivated and equipped not only to engage in the world around them, but to actively do their part to correct some of the societal ills that plague the planet and all its inhabitants. For this to take place, while in school, students need to be given the necessary tools to become these change makers. They need to learn how to be an ally to community members in need by seeing problems from their perspective. They need to learn how to organize and work effectively with others. They need to learn how to spread the word and engage more community members and the world at large. It's a lofty goal, but social change is possible when we, as educators, plant the seeds early by exposing our students to deep and meaningful service learning projects. That goal becomes that much more achievable. So we have quite some time left for the entire hour. So if you'd like to write some questions in the question box, we'll give some time and Gina will answer any sort of questions that you may have. So one question we received is, have you experienced any challenges with teaching these controversial topics? So I think I have a couple of answers to that, but I'm curious as to what your thoughts are on this, Jeannie. So someone is interested in experiences about teaching some of the controversial topics that we may approach.
Well, I think one of the things that I've seen, certainly from my perspective, these aren't tremendously controversial, but I do understand that they can be for other people because they are connecting, in some cases, to economic and social and political issues that people have a lot of different opinions about. What we always do in our HEART program is since it's really student-driven, we're really interested in expanding and exploring, how the students are going to be using critical thinking skills. We offer them information about the topics, and we really ask them to look at it from a lot of different perspectives. If you're looking at issues from the perspective, as we were kind of emphasizing, in talking about our service learning, from the perspective of suffering, of people who are, the people in need, or from the places that are really experiencing damage, you're going to be hearing it in their voices and not necessarily from a perspective that might be a little more politically or, in other ways, controversial, and that really usually is something that everybody agrees is a good thing to hear. So I've not ever actually really had problems with teaching about, animal welfare issues, and teaching about human rights issues, because we're really coming at it from a perspective that I think everybody agrees, there is suffering, there is a problem there, and we really want to hear, coming from the place of those who are experiencing that.
Yeah, I certainly agree. I think the idea of approach is huge here. We're approaching it from an empathetic place. We're approaching it from a place of understanding the sort of needs of those that might be suffering, as well as approaching it from an age-appropriate place. We're talking about working with elementary school age students. There's some things that we want to reference. There's some things we want to give them information to, and there's some things that maybe are too sensitive for them right now at the stage that they are. So it's finding that particular place. It's finding those sort of ideas in topics that they're able to grasp and they're able to work with, and then broadening it out from there. So I definitely agree with what you're saying. We have another question here. I work with first graders and wondering what has been the most successful and powerful projects for 6 to 7-year-olds. Now, Jeannie, I know you work mostly with more older populations. I was curious if maybe you have worked with students of that age, and if there's anything that you can reference, or maybe there's certain things that you think that you've done with older populations that could also work with first graders?
Well, one of the things that we've been doing, that HEART's been doing for a couple of years now, is collaborating with local libraries and doing, after school and vacation time programs in the libraries. So those are multi-age, and we've had really young kids come to the library programs and participate, and really, I love that. I really like the challenge of a multi-age group, and finding ways of presenting information that is interesting, but that even very young children can, get something out of, and then having ideas for a project to again, that lots of different age groups can participate with at different levels and help each other with. So I'm just thinking of some of the things we were doing with the library programs. One that I thought was really great, we did a project that was really, we were talking about sort of respecting our neighbors, and we'd done a couple of classes, a couple of lessons about bullying and about other ways of respecting, diversity in the community. And then I brought in, the big poster paper, and everybody, we worked together, the older kids helping the littler ones, made life-size outlines of, of each child that represented themselves. And then within that large sort of life-size outline of themselves, they wrote inside the body space things that were important about them and things that they really wanted others to respect about them, skills they had, things they loved, things that were really sort of what they considered to be, really, sort of important qualities that they wanted the world to know about and care about. And then around the spaces outside, they wrote, ideas or drew pictures, to depict ways that they would connect and respect to others in the community. And they were awesome. They came out. They were really beautiful. We put them up all around the walls in the library space that we were using. And again, the kids really were able to work together, at making this. So this is an example of something that, even very little kids, had a lot of fun with. You could use different kind of art materials for that. You could use collage, depending on what you wanted to do. So that was fun.
Oh, that's a great example, and it sort of had me thinking about some other things when we talk about being a good neighbor. Some specific examples of working with the sort of the younger population is students really can identify with and do some nice work with urban wildlife. So if you work in New York City, or maybe it doesn't necessarily have to be urban, it can just be your sort of neighborhood wildlife, animals like squirrels and pigeons, chipmunks, sort of animals that they see every day, introducing the idea of sort of how to empathize and the day-to-day life of what it might be for an animal like that, say for a squirrel or a pigeon, and then students working on projects, education projects we've done with younger populations about creating maps of what the best type of park would look like, or creating posters about being aware to being a good neighbor for your the pigeon or the swan or the duck that's you're sharing the park with. Another thing that always works well with younger students is companion animals. Discussing the issues of what it means to have a companion animal in your life. Many students do have companion animals, or maybe they do want a companion animal in their life, and going over what it means to be a responsible companion animal guardian. What are the needs and the wants that the family must provide in order for the dog, the cat, the bird to be happy and for him or her to be healthy? So covering those sort of issues, and then maybe, again, working on some sort of educational aspect where you're teaching others in different classes at the school, what are those things that we've learned and how can we get those things? Or identifying a place, sort of, for example, with JASA, where the students can work together to provide those sort of materials to maybe a sensitive or vulnerable group, to sort of piggyback off of what Jeannie was talking about before. So creating some sort of fund for those. Those are two that I can think off the top of my head. Do you have anything else, Jeannie? I think those are great. Okay, great. I'm sorry. I was just going to say another question that was floated out there was if we've noticed a change in the students that Heart works with in their confidence levels, in their behaviors after attending service learning programs.
Oh, I'd like to say something about that because I really do think that, I know a lot of teachers don't have an opportunity to do the kind of long, more extended program that I described, where you really get to teach about consensus and the active listening skills and collaborative learning. But if you get to do it at all, I've really seen incredible, really actually pretty moving changes in the way, by participating in that kind of process, in the way students who I know at the outset, of the class were, the sort of the designated, kids that either were teased or that were in trouble or that were not very successful, really went through a process of finding their voice, feeling included, feeling like they had something to contribute. I've just really seen that happen almost every time I teach these classes. That kids, who might start out, fussing and fighting and having a really tough time working with a group, start to realize they're going to be respected, they're going to be heard, that we're going to keep working until we find a way for them to meaningfully contribute, that's really the goal of the group. and that kind of a goal really connects, as I said, to the whole idea of why we're doing service. We're doing service so that we really are having that sort of deep connection and compassion to others. And we can't really do that unless we're going to treat each other's, in our group process, with really meaningful respect and compassion. And after a while, the kids start to get that, and that's a pretty amazing and lovely thing to see. The really other nice thing about giving students more choice in terms of what they want to work on, what's meaningful to them, is that it does sometimes connect personally to their lives. When I did the last project that I mentioned, really talking about vulnerable people, animals, and natural spaces in the communities, a number of the students wanted to really talk about recent immigrants as a vulnerable group of peoples in the communities because they themselves were recent immigrants. This is a school that has a lot of families from all over the world, and really seeing these kids, in the class setting, standing up and talking about some of their own family's experiences, really sharing information, and having an opportunity to create something that made them feel that they were the ones who were taking control over questions and problems that they know their community is experiencing. Really meant a lot to them, and so I saw like a lot of change in how they felt about themselves, as a group that they were very proud. This was like they were the center of attention, and instead of being, concerned that their English skills weren't good, or that, they were still struggling with understanding some of the things that were happening in the community. So, that really, some just a couple of examples of some very positive effects I've seen.
Yeah, that's great, and I can personally attest, having you and I worked together before in a service learning project, seeing firsthand those students that maybe start off in their groups unsure of where they fit in and what their role may be, but since we're offering those sort of collaborative skills, those consensus building skills, but also offering various ways for students to sort of interact and utilize specific skills that they do have, they become one with the group, they become a part of the group, they feel valued, the others value them, and the work really moves forward from there, which is fantastic. And to sort of piggyback off what you're talking about with that idea of pride, that idea of ownership over either the project itself, I can definitely attest to the fact that when we're working with the younger populations, especially in the Caring Kids programs, a lot of the times when we do make sort of an educational, basically product at the end, be it the videos, be it posters, be it these pictures that we'll share, the students get really excited about it, and they sort of go down their mental Rolodex of all the people that they can share this information with, and they take ownership of knowing that they now have this knowledge that maybe not a lot of people out there have, and they need to spread it. They need to get it out there. They want to disseminate it to as many folks, because they know that the more folks that know about this, the more likely that change is going to take place. So they see themselves as those change agents, and even at the young age of 5 or 6 or 7, they feel this responsibility to go out there and push that change forward. Granted, it's extra exciting when you get to show people that I'm in a video, or look at this thing that I made, but it all works together and it's all part of the process, which I think is fantastic. Okay, so we are just about out of time, and on behalf of Heart, I would like to thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules to spend this hour with us discussing service learning. And if we were unable to get to your question, or if you have any sort of questions or want to reach out to us for any reason, you can contact Jeannie and I at our emails, which are posted up here on our slide. And for more information about Heart, you can visit us at our website, or you can follow us on any one of these social media platforms. So I want to thank you so much, and remind you that right when the webinar ends, a survey is going to pop up, and we would really, really appreciate it if you can fill that out for us. That's going to help guide us to see how we're doing, basically make the best sort of webinars, the most relevant webinars that we can for the population, because we really, truly believe in humane education, and we want to spread the word just like our students are doing. So again, on behalf of everyone here at Heart, I just want to thank you and have a wonderful day.
Yes, have a great day. Thanks for attending.